Okay, so today we're taking a look at Katana Kami, A Way of the Samurai story. Now for those that don't know, Way of the Samurai is a long-running third-person samurai adventure series, so think Yakuza in feudal Japan. Here though, this spin-off, it's set in the same universe, but we're switching out third-person for an isometric take on things, so think like roguelike Samurai Diablo. The question is, does it pull it off? Well, if you love the Switch as much as we do, hit that subscribe button and leave the video a like if it helps you out today. Let me know your favourite video game samurai in the comments below, and with that, let's get started. So the story here is the age-old tale of helping the underdog, you know, the little guy. Playing as a ronin, or translation of ronin, is a samurai without a lord or master during feudal Japan. Basically, either your master was killed or your services are no longer needed. So starting the game, you wander across a small town, and here you witness a swordsmith named Dojima having a less than encouraging conversation with a local faction who are after a debt he owes. As collateral, they take his daughter, and that's really the setup of this entire game. Help Dojima get his daughter back by paying off his debts. Now, don't think this is all because you're just like this really nice guy. This is the deal here. If you help him, he will give you, or at least consider you, as marriage material for his daughter that's essentially being taken. Weirdly, this is your idea, not his. They're your terms. You want to marry her, even if you've never even spoken to her before. So fair enough, yes, kind of creepy for sure, but it pushes the story forward and establishes this working partnership, shall we call it. So repaying the debt basically comes down to this: help him craft swords in the daytime, and then on the night explore a mysterious and often deadly cave that's in a tree. Yep, it's a big old glowing light at the bottom of a tree that you enter to find this weird ass dungeon. Here though, you can expect to find crafting materials, gold, and it all goes into basically leveling up and raising the funds you need to further the plot along. It's basically a loot quest, it's probably the best way to describe it. Alongside this then, of course, the game fleshes out the story and world with multiple local factions or gangs, to simplify things, at war for ownership of this location. What starts off peacefully pretty quickly escalates. As stories go, it's decent though. The dialogue can, I will say, be a little weak at points and very canned, but generally I did enjoy my time with these characters. They have some decent moments of humour, of emotion, and we get to see a decent amount of backstory for each. Plus, with this dialogue, you do get to add your own stamp on things. These interactions, they all have multiple options for you to pick from for your response. I always appreciate this simplistic inclusion that lets you just kind of take over a little bit. Story-wise, overall decent work. It hits all the right marks for a samurai story, you know, power struggle, factions, a damsel in distress, an excuse to unsheath your sword and go a little bit crazy. Predictable, of course, but when I swung my sword, I had a reason to, and that's all I really needed. Okay, so gameplay, and let's talk the core idea here. This one, you're playing on what is a day and night cycle. In the daytime, you'll be interacting with the occasional, you know, local inhabitant, constructing swords, setting up your warrior, and then at night, you're going to be exploring this mysterious dungeon for materials and gold. This dungeon as well, by the way, if you're concerned, just quickly here, you know, you think there might be a ton of repetition, but it's actually procedurally generated, so it's different every time you enter it. The day and night counter here though, it's crucial to the whole experience. On the screen you're going to see two counters. When will the debt collector turn up next, and how much gold do you need, and how much do you have towards the next payment? It's a simple but effective way of showing an overall goal, while also reinforcing the stress that comes along with such a, you know, a tight countdown on offense. It's going to be a huge factor also in the decisions you make within the dungeon. The reason I say this, you see, is as you progress, each dungeon has multiple floors or levels. Clear a floor and you're going to find a blue glowing well. This well gives you access to that next level, the next floor down. Every few levels then, you'll face what is essentially a boss section. So think, you know, you're going to get barricaded in so you can't escape, and that's going to be attached to a challenge. So you think, you know, beat a boss or beat X amount of enemies. Win this and then you'll get access to 2 choices, either leave the dungeon or take the risk and continue deeper. You can't just leave here whenever you want, but the game must allow it. So if you continue, you're going to be waiting for that next boss encounter, for that next opportunity. This though, it's risky because obviously as you progress, enemies first of all become tougher, but if you die also, you lose every possession you have on you and everything you found this far. It's a risk-reward system that's not only extremely addictive because of your skill level, but yeah, it's dictated by how much gold you have in your pocket and when that next visit from the debt collector will take place on screen, so you may find yourself pushing harder and harder into territory you probably shouldn't be heading. After my first few runs, waiting till the last minute, I kind of gave up on that idea, and I actually found myself taking risks earlier on, quicker, so I could be ahead of where I needed to be and not behind. With so much dungeon crawling though, I'm happy to say combat is a ton of fun here. You'll get access to a light and heavy attack, defense breaking attacks, a shield, a dodge mechanic, and then of course increasingly powerful moves and special abilities that you will learn as you level up. The game sustains a great feeling of a powerful and developing warrior. You'll even unlock access to like over 100 weapons and 9 fighting styles to choose from as you push the story forward. Combat wise, it provides a lot of choice that's bound to satisfy, I'd say, at least 99% of budding samurais out there. Now where Katana Kami really gets things right for me though, it's the enemy actions. They have a great combination of varying abilities to push you to use your skill set and weapons in different ways, and respect for making me try new things. You know, look for openings when a defense falls, slow but strong enemies that might need a different type of weapon, the weak and fast ones are different sizes, there's just so much variance. Yeah, they repeat them a lot for sure, it's a dungeon crawler after all, that's pretty common, but ability wise it made it all more exciting than I expected. Now for gameplay though, I will say you gotta be a big fan of the dungeon crawler genre. You know, grab all the loot formula, and the game shows this immediately. That first few hours, that's all you're going to be doing, with very little to do in the daytime really. Just expect to be sleeping through to the night for that kind of opening section of gameplay. The opening is really all about just leveling up and getting experience in place. Yeah, the daytime will eventually become busier, but with very little of substance, to be honest. You know, interacting with a few new locals, choosing whether to ally or go against a local faction, build a sword for someone in town, and occasionally accept a quest. This daytime payoff though, I will say, worked in the sense that as I beat a dungeon, I was always excited to see what new options were presented to me. You know, was it a new vendor, was it a new quest type, was there a new faction in town? And that was even after hours and hours of running this dungeon over and over again. Overall, it's the repetitive loop you should expect with the genre. Fortunately though, the strong combat controls, a procedurally generated dungeon, and a huge selection of weapons and modes make for something that is incredibly addictive. Yes, I would have liked more daytime action, but it never stopped me from jumping back into this world to explore. We even get an online co-op mode with 2 options: either work together and tackle the dungeons, or you even can have the ability to kill each other. Now I will say here, read the instructions carefully on screen. I learnt this the hard way when someone actually jumped into my game, killed me and stole everything that I had. It really actually only leads to my only gameplay complaint here. Katana Kami menus and instructions suck. There's no nice way to say it. Text box after text box to teach you the way of the samurai, along with a menu system that's just more confusing than the dungeons themselves. Anything that, you know, requires instruction here just felt convoluted. A prime example, repairing my sword. It sounds easy enough, but the game basically gives you a screen full of numbers and that's about it. I had no idea what I needed for the repair. When I did finally repair it, then I repaired the wrong one because I didn't know which sword I actually had equipped. It was just all a bit of a mess, honestly. I made it work in the end, I kind of figured it out, but it's for sure not ideal. It's kind of like a trial and error system. I still had a good time. 95% of this package gameplay wise is great fun, but this is a big problem for a game that basically lives in the menus. You know, you're gaining items of loot over and over again. You want to look at them, you want to explore them, you want to sell them or use them. So menus really need to be top notch for this. So graphically speaking, what we've got here is a weird one. I'm unsure basically. There's a charm to the whole thing that I really like, but you can't deny that these environments and locations, they'd probably be at home on the Wii U or something. The character models I thought were strong, some great animations for the battles and attacks, and then for the most part enemies, they each bring something unique to the table. It's just kind of everything else, the world they inhabit, that world, it feels dated. Grass, it's the classic, flat green texture with the occasional sprouting bit of grass, like I might find a Pokemon in there or something. The buildings, the locations all feel square and blocky looking generally, and textures are nearly all low quality. Even the character shadows here are weak, slightly darker grey blur underneath our enemies and warriors. The weird thing though, I still really liked it. It's a good looking game in its own way. Somehow for me, when I piece all of this together alongside the cool kind of camera filter effect you're seeing on screen now, like look at the black blurred corners, somehow for me this whole experience almost pulls off this kind of like dated look by design, a love letter to games and movies of the past. Maybe it's the constant change in the levels that helps her as well. In the dungeons, you will definitely see the same objects repeating over and over again, but the locations, the worlds themselves, they change every couple of levels, from dark dungeons to open spaces with pure sunlight. It's always pushing something new on you, and if anything actually it's the lighting engine here that really sells these spaces so well. Even then as well, on top of this, the all-important violence, it's just dialed up to 11, like pure B-movie gore. Blood just sprays everywhere, red will fill your screen. Even the skeleton enemies here spray out a ton of blood. That makes zero sense, but somehow it still works. This retro feeling production walks away feeling like they just kind of watched a ton of Tarantino movies and said, you know what, how would Tarantino screw with the samurai genre? The only complaint for me graphically, honestly, like gameplay, again goes to the menus. They're convoluted to use and also to look at. Cheap looking text, way too much information with very little instruction. There's no reason why visually they couldn't have made this look both better, but also just made it simply easier to understand. Graphics, it pulls off something that confused me, but it still works. So audio wise here, for the most part it's solid. Voice acting sounds good, it sounds completely exaggerated but good at least. There's no English option for anyone wondering, so that also means this could be the worst voice acting in the world for all I know. My ears, it sounds fine. Then the world has a few minimal sound effects and the weapons sound strong and heavy. Even the occasional grunt from your character and enemy adds a nice level of weight behind your attacks, even if it does, I will say, get annoying after a while, and we'll get onto that in a second. Music though, that's the real winner, that's the main thing I want to talk about. The soundtrack here is just stunning. I loved every moment of it, it did everything I anticipated, from setting that feudal Japan period to adding energy, excitement, and often just simply emotion and beauty as you explore. My only issue, as I said, for audio, it's repetition. They might be good recordings, like I said, but you don't need to use them constantly. The weapons, they sound the same every single time, and then the voice effects, the enemy ones especially, towards that midpoint they're going to start to grate with you as they say the same things over and over and over again. I ended up visiting the menu options at around that midway point and adjusted things so I could kind of somewhat hide them a little bit more into the music before I went totally insane. Generally, like most of the package, music is mostly a hit, with the occasional problem here and there just to pull it back slightly. And that's it. Katana Kami is a samurai game I definitely didn't ask for. It was actually a surprise to me when I saw it drop on the eShop. But honestly, I'm extremely happy to see it. Now, if it was up to me, I'd be getting a Way of the Samurai 5, but as filler games go, this does a good job of building something new in the same universe. Fun combat, an interesting story and cast, alongside a ton of grinding, exploration and loot to find. It provides a gameplay loop any dungeon crawler fan I'm sure will be happy with. Does it have problems? For sure. Text-based tutorials and just generally dated looking menus make this whole experience kind of like slow in parts when you need to go digging to set up your weapons and everything else. It's a little difficult to basically, pick up and play. You're gonna need to do some trial and error here and there to figure things out. Then the graphics, yeah, the charm, it worked on me, but it's pretty obvious. I see a ton of areas that could be improved upon too. Where this game works though, it's swinging that big ass sword around wave upon wave of enemies and picking up loot while you're doing it. And at this point, you'll quickly forgive its shortcomings. Today I'm awarding Katana Kami a good 7 out of 10. Thanks so much for watching. What do you think? Do you agree or disagree? Let us know in the comments below what you think of this one, and will you be picking it up? If you love the Switch as much as we do, hit subscribe. And with that, we'll see you all on the next video.